Welcome to the Seriously Social podcast with your host, Simone Douglas. This episode, we're joined by Daniel Franco and Michelle Holland from Synergy IQ. They chat with Simone about the obligations of leadership, self-awareness, and their approach to culture consultation.
Okay, so today on Seriously Social, the podcast, I am joined on the blue couch by the lovely Michelle and Daniel from Synergy IQ. Guys, perhaps you can start by giving us a bit of a Cliff Notes version about who you are, what you do, and then we'll see where the conversation takes us.
All right,
So
over to you.
I'll kick off. Yeah, so Synergy IQ is primarily a management consulting company that specialises in the human element of business. So we particularly look at strategy, culture, leadership, and a change, and helping businesses going from, one way of working to another way of working, and really getting their people on board for that journey through that change, and helping them through that develop and really understand what they're actually trying to deliver. So it is, at the end of the day, it is delivered on time and on budget, and people actually go ahead with it.
Yeah, which is very important for clients, obviously.
Very important.
Very important, yes. That was a pretty good Cliff Notes version.
Thank you.
I'm quite impressed with that.
Yeah.
Yes. I guess a little bit of the background of that, where it sort of came from and started. I started doing freelance consulting about almost 8 years ago now, and then got to the point where there wasn't enough time, time selling, etc. And Dan and I partnered up about 3 or so years ago now, and we've grown it now to be a consulting business.
Yeah.
So we've got consultants in different clients and working with different people as well, which is great, because our aim is to have a nice size business that produces good quality work, and where we can sort of work on the business, not as much in the business. That is the dream. That is the dream. It's not happening just yet, but we're
Still in hustle phase.
We're still in hustle phase, and we're still in that growth phase as well, and we're working really hard to do that. So that's kind of where it's come from and where it is now.
Yeah, cool. I find so culture is a big thing in business. It's something that I'm ridiculously passionate about, mostly because I've worked out that as the figurehead of the business, so these days with 2 of them, I don't do a lot of work in them, but I still can make or break the culture in about 5 seconds flat.
Absolutely.
Yes. If I'm not cognizant of whether I'm having a bad day or a bad week, or, that do as I do, not as I do as I say, not as I do kind of mentality.
Yes.
How, so when you're going into work with a business or consult into that business, and they've said, we want to change who we are or how we position ourselves or whatever it is, how do you open up a realistic conversation with the person that is actually owning the business and leading the charge?
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because we often say we only get called by good managers.
Yeah, okay.
Because, we get spoken to a lot at barbecues by other people that say you need to come into our business and fix our culture.
Yeah.
Those kind of businesses don't give culture consultants a call. It's the ones that actually, like you, are very cognizant of the impact that you're having. Other managers like that will go, actually, I need to bring in somebody to help me with this. So generally the door is open to that initial conversation. Yeah, okay. A lot of the time when the door starts to shut over a little bit and I have to put my foot in is when we start talking about the work that it takes to actually transition and change, because a lot of the times we're having conversations where it's, can you go and fix the culture?
Yeah, can you please do
Can you go and fix that culture out there? And what we end up doing is turning those fingers inwards with the leader. So that's when the conversation starts to get just a little bit tricky and tough. Yeah,
look, the culture change in any business is not going to work unless the leadership team is on board. Yeah. It's that simple. And, you can try to get the staff on board as much as possible, but if the leaders aren't leading the way and setting great examples, then people just won't follow. It's pretty simple.
How do you think leaders start to learn how to set great examples? So I'm one of those sad people, I suppose, that I really only read business books. I'm a little obsessed. And so Patrick Lencioni, I always get it wrong. One of my favourite, 5 dysfunctions of the team and all of those kinds of things. to the point that I sent my general manager to go see him live a couple of years ago in Melbourne instead of myself. That was my sacrifice. Yeah. I'd read all the books and I couldn't justify spending $1,000 each for each of us to go do it. So I'm like, do you know what? The business will get more benefit if I send you. Yes. But yeah, so, you know, like if they haven't started, where do they start?
Well, I think self-awareness in any individual, regardless of who they are, is the first step to becoming a better human being, right? Yeah. And whether you're reading a business book or books about someone going on a journey and really taking that, but it's just analysing self and where you're at in your life and the, you know, handling your own ego, setting your own goals. Yeah. If you could start managing that better, then you're well on the way to start being able to lead people.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
To me.
One of the things I often say to leaders is just be human first.
Yeah.
So if you're going to be human, like how do you want to actually interact with your people?
Yeah.
That's where you start. We've had a lot of conversations of late about self-reflection as well, because we're always on this treadmill of, you know, busy. And what we find with leaders is they don't actually take enough time to actually just sit and reflect on what went well, what didn't go well. They'll take time to beat themselves up about all the stuff that, you know, they didn't do right or somebody told them off about or whatever, or that person's not doing this. They do that beating myself up stuff. Yeah. But one of the things that we teach leaders is about formal reflection. So actually taking time to reflect for learning rather than reflecting for beating self up.
Sounds like reflecting for learning would be a much more constructive approach.
Absolutely.
Really.
Yes, absolutely. And what they actually find is when they start that process, they actually encourage the people around them to do it as well more. So they'll notice when their team member is, you know, getting maybe stuck in something and they're trying to get it all perfect because, you know, if they get it perfect, the big boss is going to, you know, be upset about it. They actually start noticing that stuff more and are able to then share that reflective learning rather than going, oh, you need to do that really perfect because, you know, so-and-so is we're going to get in trouble and, you know, and their language starts to shift and change. So it's a good place to start in just reflection for learning.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense to me. I think if you've never done that kind of thing before, that's absolutely where the value of having a consultant come in. Lies, because people don't know what they don't know.
Absolutely.
So, you know, by having someone come into your business and go, okay, let's just try looking at this from this perspective. Or let's do these things. And you go, oh.
Yeah.
Well, it's not being aware of the role of a leader either, right? You talk about business books, there's leadership books, business books, they all fall into the same category. Yeah. Understanding that, you know, we would see, I don't know what the percentages are, but it's well and truly north of 50% of leaders are put into positions because of their technical ability, not for their ability to be able to lead people. Yeah. Right. So leadership positions are there purely and solely to lead people through the workload. So having that understanding that first and foremost, I'm here to serve. Secondly, it's my actual job, right? So that's the big part. But I think you've said it many times, and Michelle was a big advocate. Behaviour is 50% of your job.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's not so much what's in your actual job description. Behaviour should be 50% of your job. So.
It is interesting because I've got a long history in HR as well, so I've been, you know, involved in many of those kind of conversations about behaviour and, you know, can we get rid of this person, that kind of stuff. And a lot of the time I end up coaching the leader around their behaviour and their performance as well, because they're responsible for holding their people accountable. And if their people aren't being held accountable and therefore they're not doing their job, there's a shared responsibility in performance with that leadership role. And that's where we find much of it ends up breaking down.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
It is unfortunate. I think, you know, from time to time, and I used to, in my 20s, my job was to fix broken pubs for ALH Group and Fosters. So for about 9 years, I went in and fixed culture teams, caught thieves, did all the fun stuff. Yeah. You know, was the popular person.
Yes.
Because you were coming in to fix something that was well and truly busted. So I wasn't popular at all.
No.
But I got very good at difficult conversations. Got very good at constructive conflict. But one of the things that always fascinates me is sometimes when I talk to, other business owners, and they'll be complaining about staff members and things, and I'll say to them, well, have you asked yourself what you've put in the way? Where, what process, do you have all the processes, in place? Have you actually communicated with them effectively? Do they know that they're doing a job that's below the standard that you expect, or are you just getting irritated with them?
Absolutely.
And the amount of times that someone's going, no, they just need to do their job. And, like a smart person, much smarter than me, once upon a time basically said, no one wakes up in the morning and goes, I'm going to go to work today and I'm going to do a shit job at work.
Absolutely.
That's not none of us.
No.
Yeah.
No human being.
No, absolutely. It's your right to understand whether you're hitting the mark or not hitting the mark in your performance. So it's not just a manager's job to be able to provide that feedback. It's actually the employee's right to hear it. And if we're not doing that, because a lot of the time we avoid these hard conversations because we think, I don't want to upset them, or I want to be this nice person and all this sort of stuff. But actually what we're protecting is ourself and our own discomfort, not their discomfort. So it's not about them, it's about me. It's about protecting me. So I often say to managers it's your obligation. Not just your job, but it's your obligation. It's their right to hear that. If you're not happy with their performance, how will they ever get better?
Absolutely. So, given that you guys live and breathe, culture change, high-performing teams, all of that really fun stuff.
All the easy stuff.
That's some of the hardest stuff on
totally.
the planet to get right.
The stuff that can't be
measured.
Yes.
It's really tough.
A lot of it's intangible.
Stuff to sell.
It can be, and I think it's like you said. So if you get a good business owner or operator who actually may have encountered some of this stuff in another role or another part of their work life, and they understand the value, it's much easier because once the trust is there, they bring you in, they give you free rein. But for that person who has had a snippet of it, so maybe they have picked up a business or a leadership book and worked out how much they're not doing, or worked out just how badly they might be approaching these kinds of things. What's the easy first step to start identifying where to start? Because it can feel like this, I remember when I bought the pub, and I was like, our culture in social media, was so solid that I was like, this will be fine. I can have two businesses. I'm going to vanish a little bit, but the culture's strong. We'll be all good. That was very naive of me because I vanished. So I'd been this really front and center person, heavily involved in the business, fully present, redirecting here and there. And I was in the same building as social media still, but I was downstairs pouring beers and doing whatever. And I stuck my head up 6 months later and I went, I've broken all the things.
Yeah, whoopsie.
I'm like, what happened?
Yes.
And it was literally 6 months. So we went from 6 months of being this, highly invested, accountable, flat structure, all the good stuff that you read about in books, to no one knows what they're doing or why they're here or what's the point. Where do we start? So we've broken it, or we've worked out that we've broken it.
That's right. Where do we start?
Yeah.
I think one of the things to me, like listening to that story, that's missing is that key direction.
Yeah.
So really having a very an inspiring vision to work towards. Like, why are we here? That connection to purpose is really important. And if the leader is not there to continually reiterating it, then it can get a bit lost in translation. And I think that's something that people don't recognize enough. It's like, well, we've done the purpose, we've done the vision, we've written it down in the in the paperwork, it's in the book, it's on the page, it's even on the wall. Yeah. But unless we're as leaders making that clear connection for people to the work that they're currently doing, you can very much get on that treadmill of just act, and then we start losing that sense of connection with each other, that sense of why am I here? Yeah. I might get frustrated with something that I wasn't frustrated with before. So that is one of the things. And the question that we get asked most often is, where do I start? Yeah. So I always say start with the end in mind. It's a Stephen Covey quote. Yeah. But it is really, what do you actually want? Like, what is the vision?
On top of that, I think it really, people want to be involved. They want to know what's going on. They want to understand what's going on. They want to be part of it. So clear and concise communication is critical to getting anyone on board. So you talk about before, a smart person, it really is about setting goals and boundaries for your team and helping them understand what are they actually, like Michelle said, and connecting them back to that purpose. What are we actually trying to achieve here? What do I expect from you? Right? It's not a matter of go off and do your job. What are my expectations as a leader from you?
Yeah.
And how are we going to work together to achieve that? What do you need me to remove so you can achieve that? That's my role as a leader. So having those clear conversations is absolutely critical. And it goes back to a mentor of mine once said to me, if you are getting frustrated, and you mentioned before, they should just know what they're doing, right? It's a mentor of mine once said to me, ask yourself the question, is this person trying their best? And if they are, then you put your coach's hat on. How do you help them to the next level? If they're not, then that's when you need to have a serious conversation, right? So it actually sets a precedent for which way you react to the situation.
Yeah.
I think I've heard that put another way, in that, when you have an issue or a challenge with someone, you need to work out if they can't or they won't.
Yes.
So like you said, can't is coachable.
Yes.
And won't is, okay, this is a bad cultural
fit. Yeah, that's exactly right. And it might be, I won't for many different reasons as well. Yeah. I won't right now, but I might later, depending on how I connect back to what I'm doing here. Sometimes the won't is see you later, kind of won't. But sometimes it's just I feel disconnected now. I feel disengaged. I mean, the Gallup poll is done every year. Gallup's great. And they have, I think the last one I looked at, there was 15% of the workforce globally is engaged.
It's not very much.
Which is not much, is it? So that means there's 85% of us that aren't engaged in the work that we're doing. I think there was like 25% were actively disengaged, which means they're working against us in our businesses.
Yeah, and it was just under 90% of people leave work or their job, not because they don't like the work they're doing, but because of the leader that they work under. Or the manager. We use the word manager.
Absolutely.
It's been fascinating in some respects. I had a guest on, Ruth Sims, a while ago, and she is doing her PhD in followership.
Yes, I know.
And so like this whole other conversation that, and the first time I met her, I'm like, what's followership? I'd never heard of this.
Fascinating.
We talk about leadership all the time.
Absolutely.
What's followership? And I think it's that thing of going through the pandemic. One of the biggest concerns for me was holding together my teams across the 3 businesses.
Absolutely.
And you really, as the leader, have to have your shit together. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't cry and be upset and do all of those things.
Absolutely.
In fact, it's important that you do, because it gives everybody else permission.
Yes.
That was the interesting part for me, is by having conversations and stuff about what I was concerned about, how I thought we would get through it, what I thought it would take. They were like, oh, you have a plan. And the minute that they knew I vaguely, and it was vaguely. The minute they knew I vaguely had a plan, because the rules changed every 2 days.
Totally.
That's right.
Totally.
But you could see them all go, okay, we're okay because Simone's okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so then
you use the analogy, you can't get into a boat with your team and just sail. Right?
No.
You need to actually go, we're going this way.
Somewhere.
We're going that way. We're going to find land in that direction. Whatever it might be. It's setting a course for your team and helping them understand where to go.
Yeah, it's finding some certainty in those uncertain positions. So even if you're not in a I'm absolutely clear about the plan, you couldn't be last year. It was it was mental, right? Every day things were changing, and the experts weren't experts because they didn't know what they were doing either. So everybody was in this state of uncertainty. So people were looking for some kind of stability and certainty. So even if it was it's going to be okay, we're going to talk 3 times a week. We're going to, okay, that's at least something I can grab hold of that's certain. It's not a lot, but it's something.
Yeah.
And that's really about that connection. I mean, when we were talking with a lot of our clients through that period of time, because as you can imagine, the kind of work that we do, it took a big hit through that period of time. And, you know, talking a lot with our clients, we were going, just double your communication. Whatever you do now, double it. If it's 0, then put a few on there and then double it. You know, just double your communication. Stay connected. However you do that, stay connected. Send an extra text message even. Just making sure people know that you're there.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good spot to end it on, because it all does come down to communication in business, every aspect of it. I think for those of you that are listening to this podcast and perhaps, you know, you've survived the pandemic, you're still employing people, and now's probably a good time to push the reset button on your culture and your vision and get some clarity around where you're going. Then Daniel and Michelle are the people to talk to. You'll find all of their contact details in the comments below if you're watching the video on social media. So reach out to them and have a conversation that sets you up for success, not just for this year, but more importantly for 2022, because we're at the end of the first quarter now. So we're already into it in earnest. Guys, thanks very much for joining me.
No worries. Thanks for having us.
My pleasure.
It's been great. Cheers.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Seriously Social. Check our website for the latest news, show notes, and for details about Simone's latest book, Confident Networker. You'll find us at socialmedia.aok.com.au/podcast.